going to talk USC football. And hey, lots of late breaking news. Yep, it's Eric Gentry, Anthony Lucas. They won't play another game. They won't play another down for USC this season. And so when it rains, it pours, right? And you know, so much to kind of unpack and peel away from these stories. But really, you know, before we get to Gentry and Lucas specifically, like at least USC, if it had been able to close down the Michigan and Minnesota games, and obviously the Penn State game that we just had was another missed opportunity, another close game slipping away. But my main takeaway from the Penn State game, before dealing with Gentry and Lucas specifically, my main takeaway from the Penn State game is, hey, where was that performance against Michigan and Minnesota? Because if USC had played Michigan and Minnesota the way it played against Penn State, a much better team, USC's 5-1. And USC still has its main goals available. We can debate whether those goals would be likely to be achieved, but those goals would be in play. They'd be available. USC would be 5-1. Trojans would be very much in the hunt, in the thick of things. You know, you wouldn't call them the Big Ten favorite, not pretending that, especially with a loss to Penn State. Like USC would not have been favored to make the Big Ten championship game. But at 5-1, you're still playing for a 10-win season. You're definitely still playing for the college football playoff. You're definitely still playing for a New Year's Six bowl. I mean, you know, there are worse things to be than a New Year's Six bowl team. You know, you don't make the playoff, but you make the NY6. That's still pretty good. It's not unbelievable. It's not incredible, but it's pretty good. And it's the kind of thing that would get the recruiting needle trending in the right direction. I know that USC is not doing that badly for 2025 and 2026, but you know, you then look at Oregon, you know, and the Ducks squeaked past Ohio State. I mean, Dan Lanning's recruiting is still in line to be elite based on what happened over the past weekend. Like, you know that the freight train's going to keep rolling for Oregon now that the Ducks have beaten Ohio State and are almost certain to be in the college football playoff. USC needed to keep up, and with losses here, you know, that's definitely going to be an issue for USC. So, you know, the fact that USC lost at Penn State, obviously people are going to be frustrated that USC couldn't close this thing down after blowing a 14-point lead. But again, Penn State is a better team than Michigan and Minnesota. In many ways, it makes me think of why couldn't USC have played this well against Michigan and Minnesota to be 5-1. And so with those missed opportunities, and then you add the Penn State missed opportunity, 3-3, and now you add the Eric Gentry and Anthony Lucas injuries. And Anthony Lucas, bless his heart, like, he tried. And you could tell he wasn't 100%. This was even before the injury. And you could also tell that, you know, the penalty called against him was utter rubbish. USC gets the short end of the officiating against Penn State. And meanwhile, Oregon gets every 50-50 call and that ticky-tack pass interference penalty against Ohio State, you know? So, like, just kind of turning the screw there, right? It was just an absolute SHIT sandwich of a day for USC on Saturday. They not only get stiffed by the Big Ten refs, you know, Makai Lemon getting manhandled, no pass interference calls against him, and then Oregon's getting every benefit of the doubt on calls against Ohio State. And pass interference was like called completely differently in those two games. Like, muggings against USC receivers, not even called against Penn State. And then in Oregon, Ohio State, just even the slightest little touch against a Duck player, whoo, the flag comes out. So just that's how it's going. That's the way this season is unfolding for USC. And so with Eric Gentry out, USC loses its best defensive player. There's no question that Gentry was USC's defensive MVP in September when he was playing. And, you know, against Minnesota, with Anthony Lucas there on the field, USC was still leading Minnesota. USC held Minnesota to 10 points in the first 50 minutes of that game, even with Gentry not playing. And that's because Anthony Lucas was one of the guys really holding it down for USC in that game. But then you lose Lucas on top of Gentry. And, of course, Bear Alexander being out of the picture because he's redshirted and intends to transfer. just it was a straw that broke the camel's back, right? That, okay, you can be without Gentry, you can be without Bear Alexander, but you can't then lose Anthony Lucas on top of those two guys. That's just too many bodies to lose, too many quality players to lose. And now we have the reality that USC is without Gentry and Lucas for the rest of the season. It's a crusher. It's a crusher. There's no way around it. And again, because this team's 3-3 instead of 5-1 or even 4-2, it's just going to be hard to get to a New Year's Six Bowl, any kind of high-end goal that this team had for the 2024 season. Troy is damaged. Troy, the Citadel of Troy, not at standing as tall or as strong as we all hoped it would midway through this college football season. So, if you're trying to deal with the frustration, the misery that surrounds USC football at this point, what else do you want to do? You want to look at the fact that younger guys are now going to get their chance to play. So this is a chance for USC to build for 2025.